What if the biggest shock in Silo Season 3, Episode 9 isn't something happening outside the silo, but something that happens inside it? Because after everything revealed in Episode 8, the rules have changed. Juliette knows more, Silo 17 knows more, the rebels know more, and the people controlling Silo 18 are running out of ways to keep the truth contained. But then comes the title, asterisk, farewell. One word. And suddenly, the question isn't just what will happen next, it's who are we saying goodbye to? Asterisk, is someone about to die? Is someone about to leave the silo? Could Silo 17 finally become part of Silo 18's story? Or is this farewell much bigger? Could this be goodbye to the world the characters have known for generations? Because the official synopsis gives us two huge clues. Camille makes an announcement that stuns the entire silo. And in the before times, asterisk, Daniel and Helen attend a special event. Asterisk, those two storylines may appear completely separate, but I don't think they are. And by the end of this episode, we could discover that the choices being made in the past are directly connected to the crisis Juliette is facing right now. So let's start with the biggest mystery. Camille's ANO and Chino and Camille has spent much of the season operating from the shadows. She's connected to power. She understands how dangerous that situation has become, and now she is about to make an announcement powerful enough to stun the entire silo. That wording matters. Not mechanical, not judicial, not a small group. The entire silo. That means whatever Camille says could affect everyone. And there are several possibilities. Maybe she announces something about Juliette. Maybe she announces a new policy. Maybe she reveals information about the outside, or maybe she announces something that the residents never expected to hear. A change in leadership, a change in the rules, a change in who is allowed to leave, or even something involving the people who have been missing. But here's where the theory gets interesting. Camille isn't simply another authority figure. She's been caught between competing forces. Her husband Robert is involved. Bernard's influence is weakening. The rebellion has exposed cracks in the system. And Juliette is still the biggest unknown. Camille now has to decide what she actually believes. Does she protect the system, or does she protect the people? And those two choices may no longer be compatible. Juliette's situation, the end of Episode 8. Juliette makes an enormous sacrifice. The rebels are trying to reach the pipe connected to Safeguard, but Judicial has anticipated their move. Juliette realizes Shirley could be caught, so she makes a decision. She gives herself up, not because she has lost, because she is protecting someone else. That is classic Juliette. But there is a major problem. Once she's captured, she becomes vulnerable. The people in charge can question her. They can isolate her. They can try to use her against the rebellion. And they can potentially use her disappearance to control the story. But there's something they can't control anymore. The people who know she's alive, and the people who know what she's fighting for. That's why Juliette's capture may not actually be a defeat. It could be the moment that forces the silo to choose sides. The pipe changes, EVRITHING. Remember what Kennedy discovered. The poison threat isn't theoretical. There's a physical system that can be manipulated. Jimmy's mother sacrificed, herself trying to seal the dangerous pipe, and Kennedy now understands what needs to happen. But the rebels need access to Judicial. That's the problem. Judicial is where Camille's power is concentrated. So the rebels have to infiltrate the very institution that has been hunting them, and now Camille knows they're coming. That creates a fascinating question for Episode 9. Asterisk. Does Camille stop them? Asterisk. Or does she secretly allow them to continue? Because if Camille's announcement is connected to the Safeguard crisis, she hoots may know something the rebels don't. Bernard's PUSITON. Bernard's situation is becoming increasingly unstable. For years, Bernard represented the system. He knew the rules. He knew the secrets. He knew what happened when people disobeyed. But now he's surrounded by uncertainty. Juliette has survived. The rebellion has survived Silo. 17 has survived. Information is moving between silos, and the residents are beginning to realize that the official story isn't complete. Bernard can't simply erase all of that, because the problem isn't one person anymore. It's knowledge. Once enough people know the truth, you can't arrest the truth, and that could be why Camille's announcement is so important. If she says something that confirms even a fraction of what the rebels suspect, Bernard's authority could collapse almost instantly. The most interesting POSSCBILITE. Why? Here's my theory. Camille's announcement may involve Juliette's fate, think. About the situation, Juliette is dangerous to the old system, but killing her could create a martyr. Keeping her imprisoned could create another rebellion. Letting her go could expose even more secrets. So what does the system do? It could try something much smarter, control the story instead of saying Juliette was captured. They could announce Juliette has chosen this, and that distinction would be enormous because the silo's greatest weapon has always been controlling what people believe. If Camille can convince the population that Juliette is dangerous, the rebellion becomes easier to contain. But if Camille tells the truth, everything changes. And then there's Silo 17. Silo 17 is no longer just a location, it represents proof. Proof that another silo survived. Proof that people can exist outside the control of Silo. 18. Proof that the official history is incomplete. Lukas and Kennedy are now connected to that world, and that creates a problem for Silo 18's leadership, because how do you tell people? There is no other silo when people have already communicated with another silo. How do you tell them? No one can survive outside when people have. How do you tell them? The system is necessary when another society has survived without it. The walls aren't just physical anymore, they're informational, and those walls are beginning to collapse. Solo's important Suoso story becomes even more important because of that connection. He knows what happened when his silo fell apart. He knows the consequences of isolation. He knows how fear can destroy a community. And now he may have to decide whether Silo 17 should remain isolated or become part of something bigger. That's not an easy decision, because cooperation creates strength, but it also creates risk. If two silos communicate, their enemies can potentially track both. If one silo becomes compromised, the other could become compromised. 2. The founders may have had a reason for keeping the silos separated, and Juliette is about to challenge that. Separation. The 51 SIOs episode 8 gave us another enormous piece of information. There weren't just a handful of underground shelters. The project involved 50 silos, with a larger network shown as part of the survival plan that changes the scale of the story. This wasn't a local disaster response. This was a civilization-level contingency plan. Someone was preparing for humanity to potentially disappear. And if that is true, then the next question becomes unavoidable. Who decided which people would be saved? Because there was never going to be enough room for everyone. That means somebody had to make a selection. Scientists, engineers, government officials, military personnel, ordinary citizens, what rules determined who deserved a place. The dark side of this is where Silo becomes much more disturbing. Imagine knowing that civilization might end. You have limited space, limited food, limited oxygen, limited resources, and you have to decide who gets inside. You could tell yourself we are saving humanity, but someone else might hear. You are deciding who deserves to live. That distinction could have shaped everything that came afterward, because the people who built the silos weren't simply constructing shelters. They were designing society. They were deciding how people would live, how information would be handled, how leadership would work, how rebellion would be treated, and eventually those emergency decisions became permanent rules. The before TM Hesnap. We come to Daniel and Helen. Their story is moving closer to the moment when the world we know disappears. And Episode 9's official synopsis says they attend a special event. We don't yet have enough confirmed information to say exactly what that event is. And this is where I want to separate fact from theory. Confirmed. Daniel and Helen attend a special event theory. That event could bring them much closer to the Silo project. And if that happens, their relationship with Stenson's plan could change dramatically, because Daniel and Helen have already been offered the chance to participate. They've seen enough to understand that something enormous is happening, but they aren't automatically willing to accept the solution, and that resistance could become incredibly important. Why Helen Mittrs Helen isn't just observing history. She's investigating it. She's a journalist. Her instinct is to question the official explanation, and that's exactly what makes her dangerous to people like Stenson, because powerful people can control information, but journalists exist to expose it. Helen has already started pulling threads, and now she's being shown something far bigger than an ordinary political scandal. She's being shown the possible future of humanity. Imagine discovering that powerful people are secretly building dozens of underground civilizations. What would your first question be? Mine would be, asterisk, asterisk. What do they know that everyone else doesn't? Asterisk and Helen is exactly the kind of person who would ask it. Hash, hash, hash. Daniel has a different prob. Daniel is a politician. His position gives him access, but it also puts him in danger, because politicians are constantly forced to choose between what is morally right and what they believe is necessary. If Stenson is telling the truth, the threat is enormous. But if Daniel accepts Stenson's plan, he becomes part of the system, and that may be the decision that eventually haunts him, because imagine helping build a world where future generations never know why they're underground. You might save millions of lives, but you might also create millions of prisoners. That's the dilemma. Hash, hash, hash. What does farewell really mean? Now, let's return to the title. There are three major possibilities. Asterisk, asterisk. First, a personal farewell. Someone leaves, someone dies. Someone is separated from someone they love. Second, asterisk, a historical farewell. Daniel and Helen's world is coming to an end. The before times is approaching its final moment. Asterisk, asterisk. Third, asterisk, asterisk, a societal farewell. The people of Silo, 18, may be preparing to say goodbye to the system that has controlled them for generations, and honestly, the third possibility may be the most interesting, because Juliette has already begun changing the way people think. The old system depends on obedience, but obedience is disappearing. Hash, hash, hash. The theory about the aeon and no-inch of mind cures, where I think episode 9 could become explosive. What if Camille's announcement isn't about Juliette at all? What if it's about asterisk, asterisk, the future of Silo, 18? Asterisk. What if she tells everyone that the Silo is facing a threat? What if she reveals that the population is in danger? What if she announces that the normal rules no longer apply? That would immediately change the power structure, because people who are afraid of dying don't always obey. Sometimes they panic. Sometimes they panic. Sometimes they revolt. And if the Silo's leadership tells everyone that their home is no longer safe, the most dangerous question will immediately appear. Asterisk, asterisk. Where can we go? Asterisk. And that brings us right back to the outside. Juliette has already answered that question. Owen sees. When outside, she survived long enough to return, and that fact alone could become revolutionary, because the residents have spent generations believing the outside is impossible, but Juliette's experience proves that the story is more complicated. Now imagine the announcement happens, and people suddenly realize that the person they were told to fear may actually be the person who can save them. That would destroy the old hierarchy overnight. Hash the safeguard. Question end. But there's still one massive problem. Even if the residents decide they want freedom, safeguard may not care. The system doesn't negotiate. It doesn't vote. It doesn't hold elections. It follows its rules. And that means Juliette's rebellion ultimately has to become technological. She has to understand the machinery, the network, the pipe, the systems that control the Silo. And this is where her engineering background becomes critical. Juliette doesn't just need courage. She needs precision. One wrong move, and thousands could die. Hash, hash, hash. The most dangerous POS is Sibylla. If stopping safeguard requires sacrificing something, a system, a Silo, a person, maybe there is no perfect solution. Maybe the old system was designed around a terrible calculation. One Silo can be sacrificed, so the others survive. If that's true, then the title farewell suddenly becomes horrifying, because someone may have to choose who gets saved, and Juliette may be forced to make the same kind of decision the founders made generations ago that would create the ultimate test. Can she break the cycle without becoming the next person who controls everyone else's fate? Juliette's real. Schling. This is why I don't think Juliette's final battle is simply about defeating Bernard. Bernard is one man. The system is much bigger. If Juliette defeats Bernard, but leaves the same structure, behind nothing truly changes. Someone else will take his place. Someone else will control the information. Someone else will decide who can leave. Someone else will decide what people are allowed to know. Juliette has to change the system itself, and that's much harder. Hash, 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 the moment of no, RE2 or in episode 9 could be that moment. The moment where the Silo can't return to normal. The moment where the residents finally realize the old world is gone. The moment where Camille's announcement changes everything. The moment where Daniel and Helen step closer to the birth of the silo, civilization, and the moment where Juliette's choices begin affecting everyone. That's why this episode matters. It's not simply another chapter. It's the bridge between everything we've learned and the final confrontation. Hash, hash, hash. And here's the question I want you to think. ABOUTFU. Were Juliette ... and you discovered that the silo really was created to protect humanity, but the system eventually became a prison. Would you destroy it? Or would you keep it and try to fix it? Because both choices could cost lives. Destroy the system, and people could face dangers they're not prepared for. Keep the system, and generations could remain prisoners. There may be no safe answer, and that is exactly what makes Episode 9 so fascinating. Because the characters aren't just fighting for survival anymore, they're fighting over what survival actually means. And somewhere in the middle of that conflict, Camille is about to make an announcement. Daniel and Helen are about to attend an event that could bring them closer to the origins of everything. Juliette is still caught in the struggle. Silo 17 is becoming increasingly important, and Safeguard is waiting. The old system is cracking. The new one hasn't been created yet. And that gap, that moment between two worlds, could be where the most dangerous thing happens. Because when people realize the old rules no longer protect them, they stop asking for permission. They start making their own rules, and once that happens, there may be no going back. So, when farewell begins, watch Camille, watch Juliette, watch Silo 17, and especially watch the moments when someone talks about leaving. Because the biggest clue may not be hidden in some mysterious machine. It may be hidden in one simple decision. Asterisk, asterisk, who chooses to stay and who chooses to go. Asterisk. And if that decision finally reaches the people of Silo 18, then the walls that have controlled humanity for generations may be facing their greatest threat yet. Not a weapon, not a rebellion, not even the outside asterisk, asterisk choice. Asterisk, asterisk. And once people have the freedom to choose, that silo may never be the same again. And that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel to stay in the loop. And if you have your own thoughts, let us know in the comments section below. Thanks again.